So many stories, so many pieces of news, but I think the one piece of news over the last couple of weeks that shook us all was that appalling atrocity in Texas at that school, 19 kids and 2 teachers dying. And again, quite rightly, the issue of gun control has reared its ugly head in the US. It's a really contentious issue. I don't, in any way think that I'm going to sit here and explain it to you in great detail. I mean, Biden visited the site and renewed calls for lawmakers to take on the gun lobby. The problem is in America, they see it as their divine right to protect themselves. For me, I don't know what you think, there's a difference between protecting yourself and an 18-year-old being able to walk into a store 2 days past his birthday. By the way, he's not old enough to drink or drive or vote, and buy 2 semi-automatic air rifles and go on a killing spree. Former President Donald Trump weighed in on the issue at an NRA rally, casting doubt on potential reforms. And you might think that sounds ridiculous, but if Mr. Sharon Osbourne said to me the other night, there are 300 million people in America. There are over 400 million weapons. This issue cuts deep across all Americans on whatever side they are. Joining me now is a spokesman for Republicans overseas, Erol Morkoc. Erol, good morning. Welcome to Talk TV Breakfast. How are you?
Good morning, Jeremy. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Let me try and get this in the right way and not in any, just from a sensible point of view. People in this country would look at that horror. They would look at 19 children and 2 of their teachers mown down in broad daylight by, yes, a young man that patently had problems, but a young man who, through his problems, was still able to go to a store 2 days after his 18th birthday and buy 2 semi-automatic rifles. What I don't understand, Texan Senator Ted Cruz says more children will die. So just don't understand that. If assault weapons are banned. How in the name of the law can you explain that to the British public this morning? Because I don't understand that at all.
Well, it's a tough ask. On the overtly obvious side, there is a systematic, fundamental cultural problem. But regardless of that argument, as you said, how can an 18-year-old with severe mental issues who has, red flags from A to Z somehow walk in and buy a weapon like that? And the situation we have is simply sort of tearing at the fabric of the American psyche. The Second Amendment isn't about muskets or even home defense. The Second Amendment is about defending potentially the world and the American public against the tyranny of a government that would
But my friend, that's the point. It was created, the Second Amendment, in 1791. It was about defending America. I don't understand how Cruz can possibly say more children will die if assault weapons are banned. I understand this fundamental belief, and I understand, right? And this is what I just want to say to you. I know for a fact that Senator Ted Cruz, a Republican, last year got over $300,000 for his campaign from the NRA, right? That's an absolute fact, isn't it?
Yes, and lobbying and the NRA is a representative group of American citizens who are responsible gun owners. Now, I'm not here actually to defend that very abstract statement. I'm not sure how more children will die in the short term. We have to take a look at what an 18-year-old is, what an adult is anymore. You're right. How can you buy a beer in the United States or not be able to buy a beer, but be able to buy some of these weapons? In 1969, when my mother graduated from high school, there was a shooting club in the school. You would bring your rifle to school, you would shoot, you'd keep it in your locker, you'd take it home. That country just simply doesn't exist anymore. The argument that perhaps Ted Cruz is reaching for is what happens if the U.S. government, which has the most nuclear weapons, the most force projection in the world, has 0 checks and balances from its own people. You get a situation where the king of Russia, or the president of Russia, president of China, they're undisputable leaders in their country. And
I'm not saying, there's a difference, I think. And I really appreciate you being on. I know you're not here to defend Cruz. I mean, you're here to try and make sense to people who in this country are going, right, let me get this right. So people keep being massacred because it's too easy to get guns. The Second Amendment says you should be able to defend yourself and your property and all that. And you're right, though, it was about muskets, wasn't it, 1791, not about semi-automatic hand rifles. But what I don't understand about the American psyche is this. If you say to a bunch of people, defend you, there is a difference between defense and aggression, isn't there? I don't understand. I said this to Sharon Osbourne the other day. Why are there not better background checks? Why are there not better controls? Why are there not licenses? I mean, actually, right now, there's not a lot to be proud of in the United Kingdom. But one of the things I am proud of when you put it against Americans in terms of that, the laws and the licenses and the controls over gun ownership in this country are spot on. Of course, Senator Cruz, not that he's listening, there will be people like this mad kid that fall through the scheme. But to me, this country, what did he say? We are the fairest, the freest and the safest country in the world. Try telling that to the people of Texas. I don't think that it's safe. And I think that I don't understand why it's not an issue about not even human rights, just wanting to save lives, rather than this apparent group of people who say it's our right to have a gun. I mean, sure, if you're out in the Midwest and you're trying to defend yourself, but not in a school area. It just doesn't sit right. Do you know what I mean?
We're in agreement, and I think something you had brought up in the prologue was the preamble was the fact that there's 400 million guns. Yeah. There's more guns than people. So the change, well, as fundamentally needed as possible, is not going to come through legislation. Yeah. The most heavily regulated areas in the United States have the most gun violence. It's a cultural situation. It's an environmental situation where you have people with mental disorders who've been locked in their houses, who've been going down these wormholes of extremism on the internet on all sides. And we have to take a step back as a country and say, hey, look, simple things like raising the gun age. There's no real I got my first gun when I was 18. I'm a member of the NRA. I'm a responsible person who would always advocates for gun safety. There's simply no mandated even training class when you get your first gun. I mean,
right, just repeat that. There is no mandated training class when you get your first gun in the States. How frightening is that?
Well, for a country that a lot of people grew up in perhaps the middle of the last century using weapons. In my generation, you don't hunt. It's not like you're not living out in the woods. So when you get a gun at 18, there should be some, hey, let's go ahead and show you how to use it. And if you're a weirdo, those red flags should be going off.
Absolutely.
And so these are the fundamental things, because you can't take away the 400 million guns. Who's going to do it? The soldiers who are the sons and brothers of the people who own them? The police?
No.
It's not going to happen. So we have to actually look at the cultural failing. And as much as people hate seeing that or saying that, that's really the only place to start.
I guess
military under 18 to 21. I think the Republican Party can negotiate with that.
I do think, right, for me, there needs to be a debate, and whether the Republicans, the Democrats have to come together, whether the NRA has to understand. You've nailed it this morning. Yes, there should be more controls. Yes, there should be more training. Yes, there should be more certification and background checks. That's an absolute fact of life, because this is going to go on and on. Because the scary thing about things like the Texas shooting is there will be copycat crimes because weirdos think they can do exactly the same. I really, really appreciate it, mate. And I appreciate your honesty this morning. Erol Morkoc, spokesman for Republicans overseas, that big debate. And you know what? You might be tuning in going, how is that allowed to be? It's never going to go away, but they need to look at it. They need to make it better, because how an 18-year-old potless boy, right, walks in and buys two automatic expensive rifles and then murders people is in a civilized society completely and utterly stupid and wrong. 0344 499 1000, the number you need. This is Talk TV Breakfast.